He's not sorry. He didn't do anything wrong. She experienced things differently than he did. And too bad there was a breakdown of trust. That sums up the Prime Minister's view. Justin Trudeau says neither he nor his staff did anything wrong when talking to former Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould about giving SNC-Lavalin a deferred prosecution agreement instead of facing a criminal trial. He says he didn't know her decision on the issue back in September was final. So how could the Prime Minister and Jody Wilson-Raybould have experienced the same events so differently? What's coming next? Let's get some answers now. Joining me from Vancouver is the Public Services and Procurement Minister, Carla Qualtrough. Always good to have you on the program, Minister. The Prime Minister says that Jody Wilson-Raybould experienced everything differently than everyone else. She was very specific in her testimony that no, he and his team attempted to politically interfere with the decision. She's a lawyer, he's not. Is the Prime Minister just using politically correct language to say Jody Wilson-Raybould is a liar?
Oh, I don't think so at all, Evan. I think that what we heard from the Prime Minister was he does regret how things went down. He did admit that he should have been more on top of this file, that he should have been talking with the Attorney General. You heard Jerry Butts testify that as the point person in his office for her, he should have known that she was experiencing things this way. I heard a lot of admission and I heard a lot of regret from the Prime Minister.
There was no apology, but all this is about etiquette. It's about politeness. Well, I guess I should have listened. She didn't say, it's not like she's a wallflower. She said it's not about being polite, it's about the principle of political interference in the independence of justice. The Prime Minister seems to argue this is all about a misunderstanding. She's saying, and by the way, Jane Philpott says they're both resigning because of principle, not politeness. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, and how I've come to see it, is there is this massive fundamental breakdown in both communications and at the end that led to this breakdown in trust. And the Prime Minister's office and clearly the clerk and quite frankly me and other cabinet members thought this was an ongoing decision that was to be made around whether or not this company should get a DPA, and so it was always on the table for further discussion. And the Attorney General thought said she made her final decision at the end of September, and any discussion around that decision post that time period was, in her mind, political interference.
If this was all a big misunderstanding, oh, you thought it was one thing, I thought it was one thing, why then in the shuffle did he continue to shuffle Jody Wilson-Raybould?
Well, again, I wasn't, and I'm not privy to the conversations with the Prime Minister and his thinking around cabinet shuffles. I've been through a few of those myself and quite frankly lost what I thought was my dream job when I was shuffled into public services. But the reality is that Jerry Butts laid out the advice he gave and the thinking behind that advice to the Prime Minister's, and it was the Prime Minister's call to make. My understanding of Jerry Butts' testimony was once an offer that was on the table was rejected, it wasn't his advice to the Prime Minister that you put that minister back into the previous role.
Okay. Let me ask you then, will your government and will the Prime Minister rule out giving a deferred prosecution agreement to SNC-Lavalin now? Is that off the table or is it still on the table?
2 points. One, not my call. It's definitely in the hands of the Attorney General, but legally, yes, until there's the point of criminal conviction, a company can be offered or negotiated to a DPA, yes.
Okay, legally, but let me just get this straight. A company like SNC-Lavalin that is on criminal trial for bribing officials for millions of dollars, it's been in Montreal in the McGill Medical Center, bribery there, $30,000 for prostitutes for Muammar Gaddafi's son. You're saying, your party's arguing that the threshold still hasn't crossed, that they have not still abdicated their right to avoid a criminal trial with all that? Are you serious?
No, and that's not at all what I'm saying. In fact, I would say quite the opposite. Everything you just listed is probably the rationale or part of the rationale behind both the prosecutor and the Attorney General not going down this path. What I'm saying is it's up to the current Attorney General and on the advice of the prosecution. I mean, these trials can absolutely fall apart. Corporate crime is hard to prove. A DPA would grant, in some way, a guaranteed punishment for a company that might get off criminally.
One of the things the Prime Minister said, and Gerald Butts said, and your government said, is if we don't give these guys the option of a deferred prosecution agreement, we could lose 9,000 jobs. 9,000 jobs would be lost if SNC-Lavalin isn't convicted. They could move their headquarters. Is there, what evidence, I want hard evidence from you, so you're the government minister on, what evidence, real evidence do you have that 9,000 jobs would be lost?
History would tell you that when corporations are convicted, jobs are lost. Sometimes companies go bankrupt. Sometimes their headquarters leave the country. So the potential of job loss is a significant factor. You know what? Can we tell you exactly the precise number? No. But we can tell you that jobs are in jeopardy, and that's enough that it warrants consideration.
Yeah, but consideration over 4 months. There's no evidence. You and I both know SNC-Lavalin has a contract with the Pension Fund of Quebec, the Caisse de dépôt, to keep their headquarters there till 2024. Yes. So it was a sham that they were going to move it. They've got contracts right here in Ottawa. They've got a contract for a $600 million light rail transit here. Does your government have any evidence, real evidence, not speculation, that those jobs would be jeopardized by a criminal trial? Yes or no?
My understanding is if the company was convicted criminally, there were definitely jobs in jeopardy, but no, Evan, I can't give you a direct number.
Minister, let me ask you about Jane Philpott. Were you surprised when she suddenly resigned from cabinet?
Well, Jane and I had become quite good friends and still remain friends, and I knew, like the Prime Minister, that she had concerns around how our government was handling this, but she very strongly believed if she was going to stand with us as a team and the principle of cabinet solidarity, that she had to be comfortable with what was going on, and she decided that she couldn't and she wasn't. So I wasn't surprised. I was saddened, but not surprised.
Yeah, but she didn't just resign because, as Bill Morneau sort of alluded to, she's close friends with Jordy Wilson-Raybould.
No.
She resigned because of the principle. She said she's lost confidence in how this cabinet has fundamentally handled the principle of independent justice. She said it was a matter of integrity. Now she's still a member of the caucus. I mean, you're a minister. She said, I couldn't do the job that you're doing right now because it would be a violation of my integrity. What do you say back to her?
Well, I respect, I guess, Dr. Philpott's perspective on this, and I respect that she's standing up for her principles. I'm very comfortable and consider myself to be a person of integrity with being absolutely behind and having confidence in the Prime Minister on this issue. It's tough, Evan, when you're a member of a team and one of your teammates loses confidence in the team. But remember that both her and Jody Wilson-Raybould want to be and remain part of the Liberal caucus.
Do you think they should remain? They've said they've lost confidence in the cabinet over a fundamental principle of justice. These are not just two MPs. The former health minister, former president of the Treasury Board, the former attorney general, the former veterans minister. Do you think they should remain in your caucus?
Well, I think that, I think that remains almost in their hands. And I would say that I'm in caucus because I have confidence in the leader, because I share Liberal values and I share the vision for the country that our Prime Minister, as the leader of the party, has put forth. If they can express confidence in the leader and in our values and our vision, I think the tent's big enough. And I don't think that's my call to make. Am I comfortable within those parameters of having them? Absolutely. I got to leave it there. Minister Carla Qualtrough, always a pleasure to have you on the program. I really appreciate it.